So today is October 20th, 2020. I'm going to call our meeting to order. This is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. If I could have everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Glassbog?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw?
I'm here.
Here.
Joe Bento?
Here.
Thank you.
And so next item on our agenda are presentations and recognitions.
I think we could begin with recognitions. I think Dr. Manseri has a few.
She's stuck on, she can't unmute.
Oh, sorry, hold on, I'll fix it. And where are you? Sorry about that. Where'd you go? There you are. Oh, you? Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Jenny. All right, so I have 3 recognitions here. The first one is our Parents as Teachers program. It's our preschool program, and I'd like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our PAT staff in completing the Parents as Teachers quality endorsement and improvement process. So really, it's a pretty long, lengthy process they have to go through. And what they ended up doing is the Parents as Teachers National Center is very pleased to award North Kingstown Parents as Teachers with a national quality endorsement in recognition of their excellent program operations and services to families. They met every quality standard and they had to complete a self-study, and with that they have a duration of a 5-year quality endorsement, and each year they just have to make sure they're doing the same thing. So that is wonderful. That's our preschool, and they basically now are considered like a blue ribbon program. So that's our first award that we like to recognize. The second one is a world language teacher at our high school, Courtney D'Souza. She brought to us last spring, the national Spanish exam. We hadn't participated in it prior to her arriving in North Kingstown. She's been here for 3 years now. And so what is the national Spanish examination? It's a motivational contest among students who are studying Spanish. They are given voluntarily by about 4,000 teachers across the United States to measure performance, interpretive communication, and achievement of students who are studying Spanish. There's multiple purposes, but the 2 we like to recognize is to recognize the achievement in the study of Spanish language, and also to assess the national standards as they pertain to learning Spanish. So each year they place students in a couple of different categories of participation certificate and honorable mention, bronze medal, silver medal, and gold medal. And so how did North Kingstown High School perform? Last spring, Ms. D'Souza had her Spanish with a 1-2 honors class. So basically they were taking 2 years of Spanish in 1 year, and the students voluntarily participated in this exam contest. 68 of the students. They sat for the national Spanish exam, and due to the pandemic, they did it for 2 consecutive days during distance learning. So the results, the national average in 2019 was between a 65 and a 69%, and we had 2 students who scored a perfect score of 100% on achievement portion of the test, and that was Genevieve Maslin and Henry Coughlin. There were 28 students that had honorable mention. We had 6 bronze medals. Julia Ivanova, Emma Michaud, Alexa Hanrahan, Alexandra Edmondson, Elizabeth Titus, Casey Chin. Then we had 4 silver medals, Sydney Brown, Henry Coughlin, Fiona Chang, and Sophia Della Silva. And we had 2 gold in Genevieve Maslin and Kathy Axel. So we are very pleased with this first year, and we want to our high school to hope to continue with this, and so we'll be going year over year and see how our students are doing. And then the final recognition is one I'm so happy to present. On October 9th, 2020 of this year, one of our famous North Kingstown High School alums, Julie McGuire, she's the coach of the field hockey team at the high school. She reached her 400th career win against Lincoln School. And we just want to let her know how much we appreciate her great care and dedication to her field hockey team. And I couldn't say more about it, but she's been on there for 32 years, and I'd like to give a shout out to Chris Graham. It might not be her 400, but she's been with Julie for 28 and for 32 years. So I wanted to show we recognize her for that. That's pretty good commitment to our children. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Blaswell, you're muted.
I don't know how I did that, but okay, let's try again. With unanimous consent, I'm going to ask if we could move up, because we did conclude our executive session. Item 9A, at this time, any objection to doing that? No. Okay, hearing none, so I can disclose that no votes were taken in our executive session this evening on October 20th, 2020. And I ask for a motion to seal the executive session minutes of October 20, 2020. It's a lot of 20s. So moved. And a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Hoskins. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Although I think I didn't hear Jake. Hold on a second. Jake, did you vote in the affirmative there?
I tried to, I wasn't able to unmute myself, but thank you for doing that for me, so aye.
So that is unanimous. So next we have a parent appeal of the superintendent's decision. So I'm going to recognize Mr. Kent Dresser. So Mr. Dresser, at this point, I'm going to allow you to make your case for your appeal of the superintendent's decision. Mr. Dresser,
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can indeed, sir.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for having me out here. With regard to busing, I have 2 children. Of course, we're North Kingstown residents. They left the North Kingstown School Department, and then up at 10 months near Clark back in September 10th, 2020. I sent an email to the superintendent asking that we reconsider the decision to stop busing private school students to Monsignor Clark. On the 11th, he got back to me and said no, citing COVID and logistics as a reason for not doing so, which we understand that the Dresser family stance is and always has been with the North Kingstown School Department one of cooperation and one of understanding, particularly during the pandemic. But we also expect some cooperation and understanding in return. So a straight no, we can't is fine logistically, but the final answer of just, well, you're out in the cold, Dresser, that doesn't work for us either. And nor should it, because this is a service that's been paid for, of course, with our tax dollars. So I dug a little bit deeper, just to understand what sort of a leg we had as a family to stand on, and hopes of not having to stand on that leg. Now, of course, I put the school department on notice. You're all privy to that email, which would be a fairly standard thing, at least for me to do. And then, as I got further educated on the topic, I understand that back in, of course, North Kingstown citing sort of a nuanced legal stance where if our students aren't accountable under the statewide reimbursement system because we have our own transportation department, the school doesn't have, the school department doesn't have an obligation to transport our kids to private school. And I guess my issue here is back in January of 2019, both the school committee and the town council passed resolutions to sort of fix that nuanced legal verbiage in the state law, for lack of a better term or more appropriate term. you know, of course, that's public information that was done here at a school committee meeting that was reaffirmed at January 2019 town council meeting, and then continued to take our kids to school, which certainly, in my opinion, you know, sets a precedence that, you know, the stance of the school committee is that, or the school department is that we're going to take your kids to school, and that this particular language in Rhode Island general law needs to be changed is not correct, and that the commitment remains and the obligation now remains, thanks to the precedent, on the part of the school department to take our kids to school. Look, and I can understand that, you know, that creates a logistical challenge, that, you know, we're willing to work with the school department about logistics, but we're not willing to sort of stand here and you say no and close the door in our face, and nor should anybody expect us to do so. And it might sound like a petty argument, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a quick math. At house to Monsignor Clark School is 8.4 miles. There, 8.4 miles home, twice a day. At 17 miles a day, at 57 cents a mile, that's almost $10 a day, times 180. Now, when I go to work, I bill out at $125 an hour, and I'm spending an hour a day taking my kids to and from school. Times 180, that's $22,500 a year of revenue generating hours. So, you know, this is not a small issue that we're talking about here. So if you combine both of those numbers, the mileage and the time, it's a $25,000 burden that's suddenly on me. That's a lot. That's not insignificant whatsoever. And I think it needs to be addressed because I think it's sort of inappropriate to just say, sorry, Mr. Dresser, you're out of luck. You took us off the hook on educating your kids. It's fine. You're on the hook for taking them to school. It's a one-sided argument. It's a one-sided decision, if you ask me. So, you know, I guess, you know, I think there's probably more to this than is appropriate to discuss at a school committee meeting, but I think that gets the general gist of my argument. I think as taxpayers, we, you know, haven't been treated fairly, and I leave it up to the good judgment of the school committee to come up with some sort of a resolution. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dresser. Any members have any questions? Okay. Mr. Dresser, at this point, what I think we're going to do is we're going to take your comments under advisement. We're still getting some legal advice from our attorneys, and work with our attorneys, and ultimately the school department will deliberate and make a decision on your appeal. So at this point, I'm going to ask if I could get a motion to table the decision on item E1 today. So I'll do it. I'm making a motion to table item E1 for today, and we'll make a decision at probably our next school committee meeting. Could I have do I have a second? Sorry?
Second.
Second from Mr. Jones. All those in favor of tabling decision on item E1? Oh, Mr. You want to speak? Sorry?
Oh, go ahead, Jake. No, I was
Raising my hand to...
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're going to have a quick discussion.
Yeah, so absolutely discuss. Sorry, for some reason, because Dr. Ajay's presentation is up, I don't have all the Brady Bunch windows I usually do. So I apologize that I didn't see people wanting to speak. So, Mr. Mather, did you... I think I fixed it, now I can see you. Okay, Mr. Jones, did you want to...
I just want to make the comment, I think, you know, it's a complex issue, and I agree we need to look at this at a bunch of different angles before making a decision. I will point out that 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, and again this year, this committee has put forward a resolution that there's an issue with our reimbursement for private school busing, and it's sort of languished with our General Assembly reps. And I hope that whenever they decide to meet again, that they fix what I think is a flaw in the law that unfortunately penalizes North Kingstown and, you know, puts the district and obviously certain parents in a precarious situation.
Did you get the third question? other comments? Okay, so we have a motion to table that has been seconded. So all those in favor? Aye. Any? Still burning?
Yeah, thank you.
Is that an aye?
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favor was unanimous. Any opposed? If I missed it, wave frantically. Okay, so that passes unanimously. So Mr. Dresser, we will have further discussions with our attorney. What our plan is she's going to do some more research as well. The administration is going to be doing some research. We're going to put it on an executive session for further legal advice at our next meeting, and then we hope to make a decision at that point.
Great.
So thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. If I can be of any assistance, don't hesitate to contact me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Okay, so next we have citizens' comments, and again, I've got to fix my screen. I apologize, folks, the wonders of technology. So there are only so many things I can have on here at this today in time. Anyone who would like the opportunity to speak at citizens' comments, there is under the participants tab in Zoom, you have the ability to click the raise your hand button, which will alert me that you would like to speak. I don't see anyone who is phoned in, so I don't think we have that issue tonight. No, looks like everyone is on a computer. And I'm not okay, I do see one now. So I'm going to recognize this person. I'm just globally for citizens' comments, we do ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if you could please speak your name and address for the record. And I just have the name that is on your Zoom account. So the person I'm recognizing is listed as Stephanie. And I'm going to unmute you now. Or do you want to be yourself,
Hi,
actually?
can everybody hear me?
You can, thank you.
Okay, great. My name is Stephanie Sullivan. I live at 36 Arcadia Drive. I have 2 daughters that attend North Kingstown High School. One is a freshman and one is a junior. I want to start by thanking the teachers at North Kingstown High School who are doing a tremendous job with this hybrid model at the school. I can't even begin to tell you how happy we are with the synchronous learning that is going on, and I know that was a big issue this summer at a lot of the meetings. And it's happening, and it's great, and we're very, very grateful because I know the teachers are so dedicated and working really hard to include all students at all times. But I'm speaking tonight to ask the school committee and Dr. Roget to reconsider the timeline for the rolling out of the Canvas program as the new learning management system for the district. Like I said, my daughters are part of the hybrid model, and we're grateful for the synchronous learning. But, day to day, we have had to deal with multiple glitches that have come up, IT issues that I know are going on in the classroom and here at our house. And we've been able to, or I should say my daughter and their teachers have been able to navigate these problems because they are using the Google Classroom platform, something that they're very comfortable with, something that they have been using for years. And I'm grateful that they have the knowledge that they have. I'm a school teacher myself, and if things really get to, if we can really all problem solve together, because we also use Google in Jamestown. Google Classroom is known by the parents and students and staff in the district, and it's a learning platform that seems to be working, and it seems to be something that everybody is able to navigate. So my question is to, why in the middle of a pandemic, in June 23rd, that the school committee did vote to approve such a drastic change. I thought at first maybe it was a money issue, but I'm looking at the business notes, and it was not a decision that was driven by cost, as I can see that Canvas is going to cost the district over $110,000 for 3 years, and Google Classroom is just over $12,000. As we were getting ready and gearing up to go back to school in August, the teachers at NK were given 2 weeks of training, and while that's great, they were also tasked with having to plan lessons that were needed to be done for both virtual learners and in-person learners, and which is in and of itself, I know firsthand as a teacher, is exhausting, and the whole pandemic is exhausting. We have had to learn, and the teachers at NK have had to learn how to become just different types of teachers. So it's my request that the school committee revisit this. and we delay this decision. While I know change is good for some things, right now in the middle of a pandemic, I ask you please, just take a pause on this. Let the students continue. This is a huge stressor for the kids. And I know it's a huge stressor for the teachers. Let them continue and finish through this pandemic year and delay the rollout of Canvas to the 21-22 school year. And, you know, a thought would be give the teachers time over the summer, give them time to learn and train and prepare so that they can turn around and be teachers to the students and teach them how to use Canvas, you know, with confidence. And that's all I'm here to say. So I just hope you will reconsider that decision.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak? I do not see any others. So we'll conclude the citizens' comments portion of the meeting. Next item on the agenda would be the superintendent's report, so I'll turn things over to Dr. Ajay.
Thank you, Mr. Blaswald. I have two quick comments tonight. First, I just want to make a comment about political advocacy. You know, there was an article in this week's paper about, students being politically active and how that is playing out in the community. And we have no problem with students being politically active in North Kingstown. I just think it's worth a note to the public that when any student or any employee, for that matter, does so, it is important that they do so as a private citizen and not use any district resources or represent themselves as potentially being representative of the district. That is the concern that I have as a superintendent about anything of that sort. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think I was pretty clear about that in the article in the Standard Time this week. So if you want to see more on that, there's more there. The other point I wanted to address, a couple of questions. One, I've had a few questions come to me concerning, the reopening, and, is it something where if there's a student that tests positive or a teacher that tests positive, would the whole school or the whole district necessarily get an email about that? And that is not necessarily the case, and so we're, again, following the Department of Health, and we're doing the contact tracing that needs to be done. And if there is people that are sitting close to that student in a class or a bus, for instance, or in any other situation, like a team that they play on, we would definitely be calling those families, and the Department of Health would call those families about quarantine. If your student happens to be in a classroom or in a bus, but sitting farther away and not necessarily considered at risk, you would still be getting an email notification from the district because that notification would say you may want to get your child tested. So, and that is upon advice to us from the Rhode Island Department of Education, so that's the way we have been following. If you are interested in seeing the numbers of positive cases in NK schools and in all schools around the state, you can do so by going to the RIDO website. They have a COVID-19 data page, and one of the links on that data page is called K through 12 data. And you can see a listing of, I think there are up to about 250 different schools in Rhode Island that have identified with at least one positive case. And generally speaking, the listing is about, they update it every week, and if a school has a positive case, there will be a notification there, and generally if there's less than 5, it will say less than 5, and that's pretty much the only answer you're going to get. And then there's another column with more of a grand total over, many weeks since the beginning of school. And so, so you can find information about North Kingstown or about any other school by looking there. At previous meetings, the question has come up about, what's going to happen in February, and would distance learning parents, particularly at the elementary level, be able to come back to their elementary school for an in-person session, if they so desire to do so. And we're very confident that we'll be able to accommodate anyone who wants to do that. Some of the conditions may be a little bit different because we just don't know the numbers that will or will not. And we really don't know a lot about, where we're going to be, even just in a few weeks, much less a few months. So we could be in a case where people are feeling much more comfortable and the number of cases stay low and more of the distance learning parents want to come back and we have space in the classroom to do that. We may not be able to keep it, at a cap of 21 anymore, however. And we also have a whole, group of distance learning teachers. There are 18 distance learning classrooms in all. So there may be the possibility, if the numbers change, say at the semester, that a few of those teachers come back to an in-person, but that would mean that some of the kids in those classes would then be changed to different teachers. You see what I mean? So there could be a little bit of some shuffling going on, but we're confident that, if you're a Hamilton student and you're distance learning right now and you want to come back to Hamilton, or if you're a Forest Park student and you want to come back to Forest Park in person, that we would be able to accommodate you to do so. So we're not worried about that part. But there's just, the rest of it is still a lot of unknowns, and, we plan on doing a lot of communication with parents, around the first and second week of January to get ready for this, and at that point, there will be another decision to be made from parents. And we would, guess that there will be at least some parents who would be interested in changing one way or the other. Some may feel, now is the point, because it's winter, I feel more comfortable going to distance learning. So, and we're going to do everything we can to accommodate all of those requests. So, that's all I have for my superintendent's comment tonight, Mr. Blaswell. You're muted, Mr. Blaswell.
Thank you, sorry. So next we have routine items and our consent agenda. Anyone have any items they would like to exempt from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Approved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. And a second from, sorry, who was that?
Me, Jake.
Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I actually did the wrong section when we tabled it. We didn't table the parents' appeal, just to be clear, Ms. Healy. What we were tabling was the decision, which is what we're at right now, just as you do the minutes. Everyone agrees that's what we meant to do, right? I kind of took that out of order, but we heard the appeal, but we tabled the decision. So that's item C that we tabled. Next, we have the school department approval of crisis plans. Mrs. King, could you just speak quickly as to what those are? I know we all have them in our packets, but if you could just briefly let the public know what we're approving.
Yes.
They'll be out public.
Sure. Every year, the schools update their crisis plan. In those plans, and those plans are confidential based on security reasons and based on state law. Several years ago, they are exempted from being public items. But in those plans, they put in their crisis team names, where they go in a crisis, and anything that's related to lockdowns, shutdowns, evacuations, and anything like that that would be an emergency in the school.
Thank you.
Those are due to the Rhode Island Department of Education, not the actual plans, but the fact that the plans have been updated and that the school committee has approved them. That is due by November 1st of each year.
Thank you very much. And just for members of the public, as Mrs. King had mentioned, Rhode Island General Law's Open Meetings Act does have an exemption for security, school security items. These are very firmly within that exception. They're very detailed for each school, going over exactly who's in charge of what, who to contact if this happens, what to do if that happens. And I want to commend the administration on putting those together. And one thing that I do like about it, and I've said this before, when we first started doing this, Each school kind of had their own template. They're now much more uniform, which I really like. I think it makes it easier for staff moving from one school to another to know how the format of the crisis plans work so that you can implement them quickly. So if I could get a motion to approve item C1. Sorry, wrong one. Sorry. Motion to approve item D1.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. Second. And a second from Mr. Mather. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Anything on the 2019-20 school budget?
No.
Anything on the 2021 school budget?
No.
DIP existing bond or future bond?
Nope.
So next we have the school committee goals session. So what we do every year, the school committee administration votes set a series of goals for the upcoming school year. We are a little late this year. This has not been a regular year. So, but it is very much on our radar. We want to make sure that we have certain things that we're working towards. And Dr. Jay, I know you put together a presentation as to what your proposed goals would be, so I'll turn that over to you for that.
Thank you very much. Yes, as you mentioned, normally this is a meeting that's done a little more casually and we do it in August, but because of all the conditions for reopening and all that, this got put off a little bit. So tonight, I'm just looking to get the conversation started with the school committee about goals that we would like to achieve for the year. And I would anticipate coming back at our November meeting to kind of finalize those goals. So first, I'd like to just do a little recap of the kinds of goals that we set last year and how they worked out. And other than the coronavirus obviously stole the news from just about everything every district was doing. But we really did accomplished a lot of great things in terms of setting goals and accomplishing them. We were on our way with the long-term facilities plan, which I had presented to the school committee and town council, at least as, again, something to start the conversation back in last January. And obviously that got put on the back burner once the coronavirus hit. But there has been a major replacement of the Davisville Middle School windows. The installation was completed in the summer of 2020. The high school, how long have we been talking about this? Finally, there is air conditioning at the high school. And that installation was completed for the second and third floor and the spine this summer as well. And we have an absolutely beautiful track and field that was also completed partially last summer and partially this previous summer of 2020. So kudos to all involved there, particularly Mrs. King for leading these efforts and making sure that things were done the way they ought to be and completed on time. The results, as you can see from some of these pictures, are just beautiful. And just about any district to have these kinds of projects accomplished in that period of time is a really remarkable thing. So we're very fortunate here in North Kingstown to have some of these major projects completed. We also, had a discussion with, our staff and union and school committee and administration about, the future of Davisville Academy Clinical Day program, and we have settled into a good model with our own principal, and we're very happy with that. We revised our graduation policy, so it has more personalized options for students. That was completed last fall and approved by the school committee. Right now, our middle school educators are going through the process of revising for a high-quality ELA curriculum. That terminology comes from the Department of Education, and we were able to acquire regular grant money to help us along in that as well. And Dr. Mansiri is leading in that effort, and that is going well. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we look at the goals coming up. We had a goal for a financial literacy requirement, which is now something that is required of all students, one way or another, through various coursework at the high school. We also have, started down the road of a civics education update for the committee, and we were in the midst of doing that when the coronavirus hit, so that piece has been put on pause. We had commissioned a transportation study, and at some point we are going to have a presentation of that study. And we have many updates to technology, and a district learning management system that is new in NK, and those items are in progress. There are a lot of logistical issues, particularly around the acquiring of Chromebooks and various technology, given the state of the world right now. But we're very fortunate to have what we have, and we have a great deal on the way, which we're hoping is going to be almost any day now. So to recap, once COVID-19 came in, so much of what we were doing changed. From distance learning and different use of technology, the rollout of that, the differences in transportation, the work of food service, the working conditions for all of us, extracurricular events and athletics, whether they be canceled or, as you can see here, played under different conditions with students wearing masks and certain sports running and certain not, and those that do have very strict conditions about how those things work. Obviously, teaching and learning, so much has changed because of the conditions of the pandemic. And when I look all around, I see nothing but people working harder than they've ever worked before, and really making heroic efforts everywhere to make this work. And there's even a picture here from last year's graduation parade, something that we had never done before, but a socially distanced way of celebrating our graduates, which a lot of folks in town really found to be a huge success, and something that we probably want to do whether there's a pandemic in effect or not. But obviously this has affected our budget, it's affected our staffing, it's affected our special education services. This slide could be about 30 or 40 items long, because it really has had quite an effect on just about everything that we do. So as we go into 2021, there's just so much that's unknown. We still do not have a number from the state legislature on the state aid for this current year. Normally, we have that number, very confidently in the spring, and it's voted on sometime in June, and then we just move along with our budget. Right now, we don't know if that number is going to stay true that we were hoping for, or if it is going to trend downward significantly, and so very difficult to plan in that respect. Not to mention the fact of district funding. There have been a number of highly publicized meetings between the school committee involving the town council, and we are where we are with funding, and we're waiting for other, particularly for that state aid number, to see what more we're going to need to do to make our budget work for us. So furthermore, we don't know for sure what we're going to need for the remainder of this school year, and we don't know for sure whether moving into the following school year, when we put together our budget this year, that we're going to need to be budgeting for more distance learning. We just don't know, and everything that goes along with it. So there's a lot that's unknown, and not the least of which is the economy. And obviously the economy affects tax dollars. The tax dollars affect the legislature and their ability to support public schools. So I don't know if there's ever been a more challenging time to put together a plan to accomplish things. So that's just a real important piece of context right there. So that all being said, what we are proposing to the school committee is that, first and foremost, that, we need to be mindful that we're in a flexible situation this year. We're making adjustments per COVID conditions. Some of these items change almost daily, if not weekly, and we just need to be mindful of that. And so what we can predict this week for the next month or so may be very different once we get into the winter months or the spring. And when you're talking about setting goals and planning, there's got to be a little bit of flexibility there, and a readiness to change the plan on sometimes almost a moment's notice. We need to provide the right supports needed for successful conversion to the Canvas LMS. I appreciate the comments earlier. We have made a big commitment to all of this, and with good reason. It is a very robust LMS, and we find it to be a very promising product that we want to utilize. And our union has been working with us, and we've had a successful professional day this week. We plan on more, and to provide all the supports that we need to do this the right way. We're in contact with our teachers and want to make sure that they're supported, and we're gonna move forward the best that we can. But number one is to support the people using this and making sure that they're comfortable with using the LMS. Number three, we need to get back to the facilities planning. And whether we, rush right into talking about a bond initiative right away or not, one of the requirements that we are going to need to be focusing on is an educational facilities assessment. And I would ask Mrs. King right now to talk a little bit about what that involves and maybe take items 4 and 5 in terms of the different infrastructure, building infrastructure needs at our school.
So back sometime last year, we were actually awarded grant money from RIDE in the amount of $150,000 for an educational facilities assessment. That it is a plan that is required now going forward in order to have RIDE approve a 5-year capital asset protection plan. So the last plan that we submitted was for FY19. I think about in FY23 is when that expires, but we had just gotten our plan in before the state law came out that you have to have this educational facilities assessment in order to move forward, and the 5-year plan is what gets the town the house in the gate. So the 5-year plan, the educational facilities assessment, is a very involved plan. There are a handful of organizations that conduct this assessment, and they really focus on the educational need of your facility. So what we tend to do now is we take an old building and we try to make that building warm, safe, and dry, because the building was built in the 50s or even before that, and it's what we have. These educational facilities assessments tell you what your building should look like, period. Not based on what you have for a building, but what your building should look like for a good educational experience. So obviously they take into account the building that you do have and the needs that you do have in that building, but they're not trying to fit your educational programming into your building. They're trying to help you understand how your building needs to change for proper educational programming. So it's a very tall order. It's a very expensive order, but unfortunately it is one that we do have to undertake. It takes into account a lot of public input. All of our constituents, that's, parents, it's students, it's staff, it's everybody. So it's a pretty good undertaking. I've been told that it could take 7 to 8 months to complete, because you have a lot of meetings. I was on a meeting with RIDE on Monday, and so the first time we were awarded this money, we were supposed to use it before December 30th of this year. So just about as soon as we shut down, I talked to Ride and I said, you're gonna have to extend that money, because there's no way you can do, a facilities assessment like this now during COVID. So they did extend the use of that money. It expires December 31st, 2021. They will not extend it any further. I did ask yesterday if they would. Their opinion is that Zoom provides a much more robust participation from constituents because they can log in from anywhere. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I do think that it does become a little unwieldy to try to get input if you have a big group, but we'll figure it out. So the next steps I need to take are, RIDE has an MPA, a group of, I think there's 5, maybe 6 organizations that perform this kind of work. What I plan on doing is putting together what our requirements and what the information is about our district, to get into those organizations, getting their bid. I cannot even tell you that I have any idea how much it would cost. My gut tells me that if RIDE's giving us 150 grand, it's probably going to cost a lot more than that. So I don't really know. But it is something that I think we need to get started. I don't think there's a lot we can do in the summer, so it would be good if we could get a few months of the work done, maybe wrap it up and finalize it when September starts again. And that way we can get, the money that RIDE has awarded us for that. The big thing, the big item, obviously, number 4 on Dr. Oj's PowerPoint, the ventilation needs of various schools. And 2 schools stand out as being in need of ventilation upgrades. Hamilton Elementary School is one school. And that school has an exhaust out system, so that's basically, in easy terms, the bad air out. It doesn't have a mechanical ventilation for good air in system. And we have that as part of our bond work, believe it or not. So we're hoping to be able to start to plan that work for next summer. What I can tell you is that part of my meeting yesterday also, RIDE indicated that in planning that project needs to be planned with COVID guidelines in mind, and that means that screams dollars. So we're going to do the best we can. We're going to plan the project. We're going to go through the whole RIDE process, and the numbers come in if the numbers come in, and we'll have to figure out what we're going to do from there. And then the other school that really, really needs a decision, which leads into number 5 on Dr. Oj's slide, is Whitford Middle School. Whitford Middle School has no mechanical ventilation at all. There's no air out, there's no air in, so that's why now we are relying on, early in the year we were relying on fans in the windows. Now we are relying on those big machines that are providing the 4 to 6 air exchanges per hour, as recommended for CDC. That building's going to be really tough. Putting a mechanical ventilation system in the corridors, okay, that's one thing. That won't be easy. But getting them into every classroom, I don't really know what to say. The building, we have to do something. I've said it before, Dr. J said it before, we cannot continue to argue about what we're doing with Whitford Middle School. And if we can't get a new middle school, if we can't get consensus on that, okay, great, but we can't argue about it for 10 more years before we do something with middle school. It's embarrassing, it's atrocious, it's not right, it's just not right anymore. So that's something that we are struggling with. Trust me, I'm a CPA, I get everything about dollars, but we have argued about Whitford Middle School for years and years and years. We have to do something. And if that means we need to put a few $1 million into that building every year, well, I guess that's what we have to do. Because we can't keep letting it deteriorate and not putting anything into it. There's hardly a dime in bond for Whitford Middle School, and we did that because we had started the discussions about a new middle school. So the hope is that this educational facilities assessment will provide the impetus or the information that we all need to either say, yes, we need that new middle school, which is where our guts are telling us, or, no, you can do this or you can do that. So, while the planning is going to take a lot of effort from everyone, especially Dr. J and Dr. Mansiri, it's something that RIDE strongly recommends in order to help everybody in the town of North Kingstown understand what exactly we have in our facilities and what our facilities can turn into and what they should turn into.
Thank you. Mrs. King, you talked about Hamilton under HVAC. Can you talk about Quidnesset a little bit as well?
Yes, I'm sorry, you're right. So, Quidnesset Elementary School needs new rooftop units. The units that are currently there are about 15 to 17 years old. And what we need to do is we need to replace the current units. I mean, they're not functioning well, but we need to replace those units with ones that have dehumidification. Because Quidnesset, although the building itself is a sister building to Stony Lane, they're mirrors of each other. Geographically, they're not. Quidnesset Elementary School is in a very damp area, as we know. A few years ago, we had that terribly humid summer, and we had the mold disease in there. So what we've been doing over the summer is we've been running even larger of those HEPA machines to clear the air and keep the humidity out. We've been adjusting the mechanical air system, but we really need to replace those rooftop units. Now, I had really hoped that we were going to be able to do that this past summer. Unfortunately, with everything that's happened, we don't have the funding for that. That project is estimated to be $1 million or more. And the reason for that is because we have to make sure that the rooftop structure can support those rooftop units, which are a bit heavier than a normal unit because of the dehumidification abilities that they have. I'm hearing that also we would have to plan that project based on COVID guidelines, which might even increase the cost. But we really do need to do something because not just the humidity issue, those units do need to be replaced. 15 years is pushing it on the lifetime of those units. And if we did ever have another really bad summer, like we had that one summer, it would be difficult. But that's, in my view of our facilities, between Woodford Middle School ventilation, Quidnesset rooftop units really need to be at the top of whatever list we have as well.
Thank you. This is a year where we're also going to be entering contract negotiations with our transportation service and with NKESP. So that is certainly going to keep the school committee busy. We also have commissioned a transportation study, as I mentioned earlier. At some point, we're going to need to get to a point of hearing the results of that study and making any kind of proposal, whatever that may be, if indeed there's a suggestion that we can affect school start time. Dr. Mansiri, you want to talk about numbers 8 and 9? I know they refer to curriculum, and you could talk a little bit about some of the work that's been happening.
Sure. The high quality curriculum this past year, last November, we presented in front of the school committee regarding what the timeline for the Department of Ed to have high quality curriculum in all areas. It was passed by the state legislature, and so by school year 2023, we have to have high quality curriculum in all of our math and ELA programs. So currently, we were in a little bit of a head start. We had Bridges, and that's our math program includes the 5. We were doing it 1 year at a time, and because we need to make sure we got that, and we need that we can go 4 and 5 this school year. So that will be planned out as of the end of this year. Last year we did a needs assessment and at our ELA at the middle level, and we were going to do something with K-8 needs. I would just concentrate on 6 to 8, and the team came through with it's called EL, Expeditionary Learning. And so this year they're rolling that out in a very obviously tense manner, because at the middle school level we not only have teachers in the classroom with their students, but we also have teachers teaching distance learning, and they're learning a brand new program, with all the resources and everything that comes with it, and they're doing a phenomenal job. One of the things that we were able to do is that's with the applied and received a $365,000 grant. That goes along with it over the next 5 years, and well, I moved down to 4 years because of the pandemic. But one of the people that we did hire was Jody Clark, and a third of that is coming through the grant. And she's responsible. She goes into all the different schools, and she, works then with CPT and that. So that ELA program is going, I think it's going wonderfully. It's a new rollout. And so then at the middle school this year, we're doing the needs assessment with the math, and we'll do the same exact thing. Alex and Palladino at the middle school assistant principal at Luther Middle, she's taking a lead on that. She worked with me last year on the ELA curriculum, and Barbara Law also doing that. She's the principal over at DMS. So we're at the budget level, we don't have a grant, so whatever we choose, we're going to have to be very judicious on what we're doing, and we just roll it out 6th grade first, or 7th grade, and 8th grade. And then at the same time that we're doing the official school, we're also doing ELA at the elementary from K to 5. So there's foundational skills between K and 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, we don't really have that. So we're looking to either do a K through 5, or we do something K to 2, and then 3 to 5. And again, once they do the whole year of looking at everything, they have a core group, and they bring it back to all the schools. And, people, again, we're using Zoom, so it's on Google Meet, so it's a nice opportunity to get a lot of people on board. And they will be choosing a high-quality curriculum. By this year has tasked themselves with offering 5 different curriculums that they would be sponsoring. And so the team that we have together, we sort of hold down 5, and we did it last year, we did a lot more. So that'll be that. And then we'll also, as this is happening, Jody will also be working with the high school, because the high school has high-quality curriculum. So this year they will be, doing some legwork on the needs assessment, and next year we will be going into the school and finding their needs so that will take place, so that we can have a high-quality curriculum by 2023. And at the same time, parallel to that, we have to do needs assessment on the science, because science has to be done by 2025. So it's coming, and that is going really well. And then the second thing is the CS4RI. You said you just wanted to go? The CS4RI.
Yes.
That is, we've been looking at that for a couple of years now. And we rolled out this past year, and so they've been info.org in all the elementary schools. And at the same time, they are this year working with 2 and 4. So a little bit difficult in some areas because they are doing some pairing up, and we can't do that with COVID. So they're doing some, media specialists that are meeting together on Monday, and they're working on, the work they have to do, they can't do together. But that's 2 and 4. The following year, we have that at 1 and 5, and then it's going to be going throughout the district. Because at the same time, as you know, or you might not know, but Rick Powell is our district coordinator for that, and he's working with the middle schools right now, and also in the CP building at high school. So there will be a vertical articulation among all the grades, getting our students using, different computational standards. And so that is that. And then next month, it's not on here right now, but one of the things that we are still doing, there's going to be more items in the strategic plan that we'll talk about that address the climate and culture and social emotional needs of our students, including a youth restoration project, or Shoe Love movement with the Break the World, all things, in sort of strengthening of how, all things that we need also because of the program and how that's it.
Thank you. So this presentation is meant to get the conversation started. What I would anticipate after, seeking school committee, some discussion and direction from you, would be to come back at our November meeting with kind of a comprehensive document with some of the details listed as to where the committee would like to focus and go from there. We will also at the November meeting talk more about the strategic planning session that occurred last month and have that particular document to share with you as well. And those 2 things obviously should dovetail
nicely. That's the way this is supposed to work. So, Mr. Blasbach, I'll give it off again to you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Jones, I think you had some things that you wanted to bring up as well. I can turn things over to you if you want to discuss your suggestions for the school committee.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take a couple minutes of the committee's time. Let me just screen share real quick. These are just some of my thoughts about the goals we should consider going forward. As you know, we generally have both goals and areas of interest that we approve. I agree with the superintendent. I think we need a priority about how we're going to operate in the spring semester. I would also include thinking about the fall. There's different scenarios. Traditionally, the fall, the administration working with the staff and our vendors and the community does a good job of handling that. I think this fall was obviously a challenge that many people did heroic things to bring about. I think North Kingstown was one of the leading districts in coming up with a plan that accommodated different modalities based on parent interest. I do think we need to lean a little bit more for the fall. Obviously, the operating circumstances and guidance and funding are going to be huge impacts, so I think we're going to need lots of options and contingencies, including talking about start times. I would say one big area I would push the committee is to think about really transforming teaching and learning. I agree with the superintendent's presentation about the high-quality curriculum, keep integrating our new LMS across the district, as well as our current strategic technology plan. I would make a huge push that we need to transform our library. I can't say it any better than Mrs. Cole did in an email to us, who is an expert who has kids in the district about library services. Our library media facilities are not postured for 21st century learners. This committee made a wise decision, I think, last year to put some seed money away. I think we need to keep exploring how to transform those really into a new space. I would also encourage that we start thinking about classrooms of the future and come up with some prototypes at each of the 3 levels to keep pushing our ability to take advantage of new pedagogies and technology to really think about future classrooms. I would remind the committee that sometimes we have multi-year objectives. Obviously, these are not going to be done in a year, but I think we need to start really pushing those areas. I agree with the superintendent about district infrastructure. I would remind this committee that we had some momentum about the long-term infrastructure before COVID. I think from a stewardship perspective, we need to revisit that and not let it go. Because as Mrs. King pointed out, we can either keep putting scarce resources into old buildings and find ourselves doing that for years, or we can keep pushing to have a plan for what the district should look like 20 years from now. And the more we wait, it's not going to get any better. I would add a goal about student achievement. I think last year, because of COVID and the transition, a lot of assessment stuff got put on the back burner. There's lots of anecdotal talk. If you read the RIPEC report that came out today or yesterday, there's not a lot of real assessment that's been done, especially given our multiple modalities that went on. I think sometimes we're quick to hear anecdotal stuff and jump to solutions. I think a real data-driven, purposeful approach to what's educationally effective requires a real deep dive into assessment. And so I would recommend the committee ask the superintendent to really come up with a robust assessment plan that then can help identify shortcomings and then guide resourcing decisions to do that. Although these are areas of interest, I would point out that as always, I think social, emotional, and special ed, just because they're down here doesn't mean they're not important or last. I think we need to keep those on our radar screen. I would add CTE because of this point. If you look at how our funding has changed over the last 8 years, we've become more reliant on local and our tuitions in. And to some extent, our local is limited. Our best projections for state funding is not looking good. Our CTE programs is what's made North Kingstown High School really stand out in the state as a competitive place where parents want to see their kids get educated. Jamestown students have options. We need to keep assessing and enhancing our CTE program as well as other personalized learning initiatives to really provide more options for students and families when it comes to learning. So that's my short for me recommendation that we think about.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Healy, I just want to mention that I know that Ms. Hoskins has another meeting and she did have to step out, so if you could just note that in your minutes, she left a moment ago. Thank you, Mr. Jones. So one thing I just want to add, and I don't know if it would best fit under either our areas of interest or as an actual goal, but with so much has changed this year with respect to COVID and distance learning, and Mr. Jones, you've been pushing distance learning and options and everything for years and years and years, and sometimes it takes something crazy to make it all happen, and that's what we have here. And we've made such strides with that. I'd like to add sort of a reevaluation of our technology and look at what's been working and what has not. It kind of fits under the other goals, but I think it could be just a separate item, just to continue our focus on the technology that we're using in the classroom between Chromebooks, smart boards, cameras, document cameras, all those types of things. We made some great investments in that even before COVID had happened. Done some further investment now that we're dealing with this learning situation. But I want to take a step back, and Mr. Waterman, you can certainly be part of that. And looking at what's working, what's not, what can we do better, what can we change, all of that as a goal. Now that we've done a few months of distance learning, and once we complete a year of it, because it's not necessarily, with many things in the world, COVID has caused some changes that we all look at and say, hey, maybe this actually works and we should have been doing it this way all along. And some of those items may very well fit in that area. So I think it's something that we should be looking at in our goals as well. Anyone else have any goals they'd like to add, questions, comments on either, Mr. Jones just said or Dr. Ajay's presentation?
I have more of a process question. It's kind of like where we're going with this. So, I didn't prepare something like Mr. Jones did, but I'm just wondering what we're doing at this point. Are we having the conversation right now to finalize for the next school committee meeting, or do we have the opportunity to share our thoughts with the administration and have them get incorporated into the goals?
So what I would suggest is, so I do not anticipate, I don't want to approve anything tonight. This is our very meeting on this topic. The way we've done it in the past is it's been a much more informal school committee meeting than what people are used to seeing. We tend to have it more of a brainstorming session, to sit down with pieces of paper and take notes. That gets a lot more difficult when we're all looking at each other in little boxes on a screen. So, Mr. Jones, I want to thank you very much for sort of providing a document, a template to start from. So what I'd suggest is, if anyone has any, serious objections to the goals that Mr. Jones had or any changes that they'd like to suggest, you should be keeping those in mind. Remember, under the Open Meetings Act, we can't be working on this collaboratively except in a meeting. So what you'd want to do is, if you have other goals you would like to add, Dr. Ajay did ask that if we could each share them with him just so he can have an opportunity to comment and maybe have a little input on what your plans would be before you bring it to the full committee. But then at our next meeting, if you have something new you'd like to add, we can throw that into the mix. And then ultimately, we try to come up with a single document that looks a lot like what Mr. Jones has done, that we approve. And we actually approve the text of that document, and it becomes our goals that we work forward. So that's how we've done it before. So you're welcome to, make a suggestion now, work on it between now and our next meeting and bring it to us again. It's our first meeting. As I mentioned before, we are behind, unfortunately, due to, we were working on other things we're working on getting things done, not looking forward when we normally would have been looking forward. So.
Okay, so one of my comments, which I think Mr. Jones' document actually did cover, is during their presentation, Dr. O'Shea talked about the LMS support, and it didn't say it in there, but it was mostly geared towards teachers, and I absolutely think that we need to also be considering our students and our parents. I, as a parent myself, have seen the student side, and I know, Stephanie talked about it in the meeting today, that there's a lot of just anxiety from the student perspective about using the LMS, and I know that the teachers have been getting a lot of support, but I don't know that we're at that stage yet for the students, and so I just want to reiterate that we have to not forget that we have to train our students. And then in our parents, especially for the parents at the elementary level who are really going to be helping the students with this, right? I don't have to support my high schooler all that much because she figures it out probably better than I do, but our little ones are not going to be able to do that as much better.
So definitely agree with you on that, and just so you know, regardless of the plan that we put on a piece of paper, that is part of our thinking as well. As we go into the second quarter, particularly parents and students are going to be hearing a lot more about, how this works, and there's going to be support for them as well.
Okay. And then my other point was probably more of a question about the transportation study. So you all know that the school start time is definitely something that I've always been concerned about. And I know that we've kind of had a pause on that. But I'm curious is there something that we need to revisit because that study was completed prior to the COVID, and I'm just wondering is there an opportunity to go back to the consultant and kind of work through some changes that have happened, or is that?
Yes, we did talk to the consultant about making some, commentary in that report with COVID in mind.
Okay.
So there'll be a little bit of both. We're also looking at negotiating with transportation right now. So, I think we want to, get to that point. I think we're pretty close with our transportation, in fact, on a new contract. So hopefully that can be done very soon, but sometime this fall or winter, I think we should, really take a close look at this study and, see what it says.
Right.
Okay. So just to be clear, the study wasn't actually completed. It was just about done. And then the entire world turned upside down. So essentially what happened is, while the consultant had done a whole lot of work, the world that we are in with respect to transportation right now is not the world that we were in February when he was doing everything.
Yeah.
Anything you were about to chime in on that?
Right, and a lot at the statewide busing level and everything is really driving a lot of costs. A lot of what has happened with, school being shut down and contractors not being paid because they didn't provide a service. There's a lot that is happening in that realm right now. So we do need to go back and not only wrap up what was left of the study that didn't get completed, but also there are going to be sections that need to be revisited. So the goal, hopefully the goal would be pretty early in January or so, maybe the second meeting in January to be able to get that done, hopefully.
Because it is it's almost unfathomable if you think back to where we were in January when we commissioned that study and he started his work, and now you look at where everything is today, it's like you're in a different country. It's just not, it's a completely different environment, so it changes everything.
Right, and to Mr. Jones's point, we don't know what the fall of 2021 could look like, and we may still be dealing with some limited bus capacities. So, we even have to kind of factor that into this. We might not be able to put as many kids on a bus, and that definitely impacts that study.
So, and keep in mind, just for the members of the committee as well, that Dr. Ajay's presentation are his proposed goals. The goals are set by the school committee for the school department. So that is ours to direct him. This is one of our big responsibilities in, overall management of the district. So if there's anything that you feel that Dr. Ajay and his staff should be tasked with, or something that, he put in his report that you don't agree with, we are the ones who set that. So just keep that in mind. Well, I'm not saying that we're not going to take what you like and what you suggested, Dr. Ajay, but I just want to make sure everyone knows that that's not set in stone. We're the ones who ultimately approve or disapprove or modify that as well. So I want to thank you for a very thorough presentation. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Or new ideas? Mr. Jones?
Yeah, real quick, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a good point, Lisa. I think, that's why I think as a goal, we need to be leaning forward for a lot of options for not only the spring, but next fall as well. I just want to make a comment. One of my goals about the transforming teaching and learning, we had a goal for an LMS last year. So I just want to make it known that this isn't a surprise. We had it as a goal last year. The committee approved it. The administration formed the committee. There was multiple participation from all different levels, including teachers and support personnel and administrators. They reviewed a lot of options. The superintendent can go into more about it in the future. But this wasn't a decision that was made in June and dumped on the district. So a lot of thought went into it. And I guess as someone who's taught 18-year-olds for over 12 years now, including students who at the same time had to learn both Canvas and Blackboard LMS at the same time, and as someone who's had students, children not only matriculate through NKSD, but also one who's graduated from college and the other who's about to, knock on wood, we're doing our students no favor by just keeping Google Classroom. I teach, actually, I've had North Kingstown High School kids in my classroom now. Colleges use LMSs. Nobody uses Google Classroom. So I fully agree about, the implementation and the administration working with stakeholders in the community to fully implement it in a right way. But we're doing no favors when we tell our students, stick with what you know. I mean, we'd be back at textbooks and lecturing if that was the case. So I just want to make it clear that as someone who's actually taught with it and taught students who come from North Kingstown High School, we need to keep pushing the envelope on teaching and learning.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any other questions, comments, or additional items for the goals? And again, we will be revisiting it. This is pass number 1, basically. Okay, then hearing none, let me find my spot again. We've reached our disposal report. Any questions on the disposal report or the personnel report? And we concluded our executive session, so we're not going to go back into executive session as is on the agenda. And we already approved the minutes and disclosed our votes. So we've reached the end of the agenda. So at this point, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand.
Second.
Second from Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for the folks who are watching. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.